Okay, buenos dias. As I mentioned in class, I wanted to try and do a short video to kind of go over some of the mechanics and the grammar and some of the structure stuff that came up in our Cinco de Mayo reading that we did in class. So here it is. It might be a good idea to have your Cinco de Mayo reading in front of you, but if not, you can look at the screen. Just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. First of all, if you remember, I did give you something that looks like this, your Spanish verb patterns chart. So I'm going to point out the verb patterns and show how you can, make like one verb that you know be a little bit more versatile and you can use it with different endings. So we're going to use that as a resource. But we're also going to talk about some of the specifics, terms that we talked about in class, and we are going to specifically spend a little bit of time on talking about the differences between que, and lo que. So first of all, whenever you come across a verb, and not all of them, but we'll do this one for example, puede. You already have an example of how the patterns work with puede that you use on a regular basis. Puede, as you could see down in the footnote, if you're looking at your copy, puede means can. Like puede ser problemático, here this first part of that sentence meant it can be problematic. Puede is can. But if you go back and you look at your patterns chart, you can see that if the verb ends in an O, that I am doing it. Hence, when you ask to go to the bathroom, puedo ir al baño. So if you take that E and change it to an O, now it's not just it can, but I can, or can I. But since this ends in an E, if you refer to the chart, you can see how A or E tells us that he, she, or it is doing it. In this case, it was it, because puede ser problemático, what we're talking about here is it, meaning Cinco de Mayo, can be problematic. So there's an example, puede. But you can also do that with other patterns as well. So you can say puede or puedo, but also you have, for example, here, AS or ES. We're going to use ES with this because the original word was puede with an E. But puedes, ES, now we're talking about you or do you. In this case, since it's can, like can you? So if I want to ask you a question like, oh, can you do this? It's going to start with puedes, ending in an ES like that. So that's why it's so important to kind of be familiar with these patterns, because they're going to come up in readings. Like for example, here, this ending, Aaron. If you remember when we did the reading in class, we came across this word when we were talking about the reasons why Cinco de Mayo is celebrated. We came across the word robaron. And there's Aaron. There's that ending that I just pointed out to you. Aaron tells us they, or you all, but in this case they, and a past action. So robaron, if it's they, past action, then robaron must mean they robbed or they stole. So knowing these patterns can help you to figure out the meanings of words. Also, for those of you that are going to be taking Spanish 2 next year, you're going to probably have a teacher that teaches you conjugations. That's not something I do. I don't teach conjugations, but conjugations are like learning like formulas on how to use these. So if you go on and take Spanish 2 next year, your Spanish 2 teacher is going to expect that you, not all of these, but is going to expect that you know minimum of these ones here. So probably a good idea to be familiar with those. So let's take a look at some of these other things. Puede ser problemático por causa de la falta de comprensión. Here's another pattern. It's not a verb pattern. It's not on our chart, but it's something helpful to know. Sion comprensión, combinación. When you see that ion, that's sometimes with an S or sometimes with a C, comprensión, combinación, that's like shun, T-I-O-N in English. So when you see that, comprehension, combination, that can help you. Tradiciones, tradition. Let's see, what else can we look at here? Saber. Saber, there is a word that we learned, saber. It was footnoted for you, and if you have your paper in front of you, you can see that saber means to know. But there's another pattern. Saber ends in ER. And right here, you can see ER tells us that it's to plus some action. Like here, nadar is to swim, poner to put, olvidar to forget. So if you see that like you did in the reading with saber, saber, to know. It's important to know. That's Cinco de Mayo. And there's your sion again, celebración, celebration. Now, let's take a minute to talk about que with the accent, que without the accent, and lo que. Now, we've talked about how que, with an accent like that, that's used in a question, like, ¿qué haces? What are you doing? But we've also learned que to mean that. So this que up here, this is what. But we also know that this que is that. And it means that in the sense of like it's linking two phrases. And an example of that is right here in this sentence. Es importante saber que el Cinco de Mayo no es una celebración del Día de Independencia Mexicano. You have this phrase right here. Es importante saber, it's important to know. And then you have this phrase that's here and then goes down onto this line. Cinco de Mayo is not a celebration of Mexican Independence Day. This que connects those two phrases. That it's important to know that Cinco de Mayo is not a celebration of Mexican Independence Day. So we know that this que with no accent, it means that. And it is going to be used to link phrases. And then we talked about briefly in class the term lo que. And lo que is super commonly used in Spanish. And we talked about how lo que is another definition for that is what. But it's not what in the same sense as que up here. It's a different kind of what. I gave you a really brief version in class, and I said to think of it as what, if by what you mean the thing that. So what I wanted to do was, that's lo que, like the thing that I wanted to do. What I really want you to understand, that's lo que, the thing that I really want you to understand. It can also sometimes mean that, or sometimes it can mean whatever. So we can look at a couple of examples.